Kaspa is continuing to move along and do exactly what it should be doing to set up for a fantastic move along with the rest of alt season. Now, we have seen Kaspa kind of come back a little bit, but we haven't actually seen it bleed too bad relative to the rest of the market. And based on some of the kind of fundamental things we are seeing within the crypto space, I do think there is still massive upside for Kaspa. There's a lot that still needs to be done for Kaspa to get to where it truly could be. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today, and also some of what we're seeing within the macro market for us to get there. So first off, we'll just go on ahead, we'll dive right on in, and we'll start taking a look at some of the several different things that are impacting kind of where we're sitting at within the market. The first thing I'm going to point you to here on CoinGlass is you can see basically everything down today. So open interest has been kind of bleeding a little bit. We'll get to that here in a second. 24-hour volume down almost 20%, so it's a relatively low volume day. Still over 200 billion being traded though. And then we're down almost 40% on 24-hour liquidations, down to about 200 million. So it's still relatively elevated when you consider what we saw kind of last August, September, even July a little bit. So it is a little bit elevated for that, but it is quite low from what we've seen recently. I mean, we've seen kind of routine 500 million to even over $1 billion days of liquidations. So relatively speaking, the kind of the leverage in the market is somewhat muted, a bit more than what we have seen kind of in the recent past. If we look at the open interest and volume, we can see here, again, this is just looking at Bitcoin. We don't have one that's kind of like market wide yet, which is a little too bad, but we could see, you know, coming down from about 87 billion to the current level of about, about 79 billion. So down a decent bit from some of the highs that we have seen, but that does make a little bit of sense as price has kind of subsided a bit as well. We also can see something interesting happening on the RSI heat map. We saw things very kind of elevated here, kind of the market average being in the strong creeping towards overbought. We actually saw things come down quite dramatically, getting very close to weak, not quite, but the market average getting very close towards the bottom of neutral here. And then now we're starting to see a little bit of a rebound. And we'll see that here in a second when we look at Kaspa price. We'll see a little bit of that from Kaspa. But most importantly, we're seeing altcoins hold their strength relative to Bitcoin, which is very, very important to see. And that is massively bullish when we consider the possibilities of an alt season. This is huge news. So we also can see here on the liquidation map, liquidation starting to kind of look a little bit different here. We can see here on the 1 day, a move to the downside potentially kind of indicated here, but we are very, very low volume. Again, as we did mention, kind of from what we saw up in open interest and just liquidations in the recent past, we can see here, again, mega moves to the upside in terms of short volume here. About 5 billion would get us to about 117,500. So definitely more money towards the upside here, though we do still have a decent chunk to the downside here at about 111,000. So just be careful. Again, right now there's a bunch of indecision in the market. I don't really think there's a clear there's not really a clear direction on where we will see the market move. And this is kind of clear if we look at Kaspa as well. If we take a look at the Kaspa chart, you can see here still actually kind of fitting well within this kind of consolidationary structure we have been seeing. This consolidationary structure, while I haven't drawn it out this far today, this consolidationary structure does end somewhere around the end of January 2026. So between now and then, we kind of may just continue to see it continue to consolidate, kind of higher lows, lower highs until we eventually get to an end. You also can see there's a couple kind of major points of liquidity here. The first one here being at 8 cents. This one has been quite strong. You can see being rejected off of it several different times, as well as being supported by it several different times as well. And then we also can see here up in the kind of the 9 cent range. So the 8 to 9 cent range is definitely kind of a little bit of a pinch point on both sides. And then we could see here, obviously the lower highs as well as the higher lows coming along. I will say from kind of a macro structure perspective, this is a very, very symmetrical looking chart. I kind of actually just noticed this just recently. I didn't actually mean to do this, but if you look, you can see, the high points of liquidity, as well as kind of the trend lines of each consolidationary point, looks very, very symmetrical. So it'll be interesting to see if this does continue to hold. So far, it has been the case since about April. We've kind of been in this consolidationary band, so we'll have to see how long it goes. But for right now, things looking okay for Kaspa. You know, as I mentioned, we have seen a little bit of a drawdown from the recent highs that we saw, but we're still kind of consolidating within this 8 to 9 cent range, which I think is okay. Again, I'm not expecting to see any kind of crazy moves from Kaspa, at least in the imminent future. Maybe we see them come out if we start to get closer to this trend line, and maybe we can kind of do a bounce off of this level and then through the trend line. That is always a possibility. Again, always a possibility that we do break through the bottom of this trend line and then maybe hit on this kind of like larger consolidationary trend as well. So always definitely a possibility for that to happen. So we'll just have to kind of watch very, very closely and see what happens here. But overall, the Kaspa chart looking really, really nice. And as I mentioned, there's still a lot to kind of cover here in terms of like, there's no Binance listing, there's no Coinbase listing. I think both of those in themselves would bring some major moves to Kaspa. Kaspa continues to kind of grind away, making tech improvements, doing a lot of things like that, which of course is very important and is always going to be helpful to the strength of the project over time. So right now I am very interested to see how Kaspa does. The other thing that we are seeing in kind of a macro market is going to be the ETH Bitcoin chart. However, before we go to the ETH Bitcoin chart, if you are interested in trading Kaspa, you can see here it is to trade on BTCC as well as BloFin. I have both of those links in the description below if you are interested. BTCC is doing a 10% bonus on first-time deposits, and then BloFin has the copy trading bot if you are looking to just kind of have your money work for you. That's another great way to do so. So feel free to check both of those out in the links in the description below. Tons of great bonuses. BTCC specifically has a bonus that really cannot be beat in the crypto space from an exchange. So if you are interested in getting into leverage trading, that would be a great way to do so. So anyway, check the links. We'll move on to check out the ETH Bitcoin chart and see something pretty interesting. This is the first time we've actually seen ETH Bitcoin hold strength through a pullback. Usually, you know, kind of up until about a couple months ago, we had seen that every time Bitcoin would dip, ETH would dip harder. Well, in this type of situation, we can actually see that when Bitcoin has dipped, ETH has dipped as well, but they've held their strength towards each other relative, and we are running into this really, really strong resistance here at the 0.032 range. If we do, again, this is kind of what we had talked about, is we talked about a consolidation in this area kind of being the best case scenario. If we continue to see this, this is of course going to continue to build strength for Ethereum on the ETH Bitcoin chart, which is always a good thing to see for Altseason. So if we continue to see this potentially, again, kind of break through this, we'll have kind of three close levels of resistance here between kind of 0.037 and 0.04. And then from there, you know, there's kind of a pretty well-defined map all the way up kind of to about 0.06. And then we have highs reaching all the way up to like 0.15, 0.16, this happening back in 2017. I think it's slightly doubtful that we'll get up to rates at this level. It could even be doubtful that we get, you know, kind of rates up at this level. We could be kind of in that situation where we continue to see kind of descending returns in terms of the kind of ETH Bitcoin high. So if that's the case, maybe we see us top out somewhere at like the 0.06 range, maybe even down to the 0.05. But regardless of what it is, we do still have some definite room to run here. So we'll have to see kind of how this ends up shaping out over the next several months. But things definitely, again, moving in the right direction from the perspective of an alt season potentially coming around. The other thing that is kind of reversing some of the fortunes that we have seen here for altcoins is the rough economic data that we saw come out on Friday. On Friday, we had a pretty bad non-farms payroll come out. Because of that, this was kind of a shock to the system. It's essentially brought the odds of rate cuts from happening in September from like 30 to 40%, which is where they sat kind of after the Fed meeting, to close to like 60%, now sitting at over 90%. Crazy how much things can change in just a couple of days. But now it's looking like a rate cut in September is nearly guaranteed. We'll have to see kind of exactly what happens here. But right now, at least, you know, it does look like the rate cutting cycle is back on. We also heard I believe it was Jerome Powell saying that they're expecting, or that he's expecting 2 rate cuts to happen kind of still in 2025. So, that would mean between October and December, one of those two is getting a rate cut. Again, this stuff kind of changes with the weather, so we'll have to see exactly what goes on there. And then last off, to kind of round things out, we are seeing a golden cross for altcoins. The last time we saw this was in November of 2024. We all know what happened then. We've already seen a pretty nice run up for altcoins, and we are seeing a golden cross coming. So I do think that this could be a potential area where we start to see altcoins run a lot further, because we have hit that golden cross. But again, everybody can read a chart, so maybe that means that we could see a little bit of a fake out here. But usually when we see a golden cross, it is generally a pretty good thing for the crypto market overall. So we'll have to check. We'll have to just kind of maintain, kind of what we're doing. Obviously not get over leveraged on anything or overexposed. But we can see, things still lining up for a very, very strong alt season and potential end to the year of 2025. So again, don't get too crazy, don't get kind of too excited and jump the gun. But what we are seeing is that this pullback that we have seen over the past several weeks is definitely healthy. It's indicative, showing us what we wanted to see to kind of continue on this path. I think everything, at least right now, is working out great. Kaspa continues to deliver. Kaspa continuing to bring value to the crypto market overall. And so I think that essentially what I'm trying to say is, as we're painting the bigger picture for alt season, we can see that Kaspa should be in a very prime position to do incredibly well and send very, very hard, because it's got so many catalysts that still need to be kind of capitalized on. In a very, very bullish period like alt season, this could be absolutely insane for Kaspa. So just keep a very, very close eye on it. I know if you're probably watching this, you are bullish on Kaspa. I think there's a lot of reasons to maintain your bullishness on Kaspa. From a macro perspective, everything is setting up in the right way. And then from Kaspa itself, I do think it has the possibility to outperform kind of the average within the altcoin market. Now, of course, everything can change over time. I'm not a financial advisor. I do not actually know what is going to happen. So just make sure that you are doing your own research and you understand what you're kind of getting into before you get into it, because of course it is your own money. So just make sure, again, you are kind of exercising your own due diligence and not getting too crazy one direction or the other. So anyway, hopefully this was useful. If it was, of course, a like and a subscribe does help. And then if you have any comments, questions, anything like that, just drop those in the comment section. Also hit that notification bell if you are looking to stay notified for whenever I do release a new video. So anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.